The manager kicked her out of the store without knowing she owned the mall. Eleanor Thompson never imagined that buying a gift for her granddaughter at the hospital would turn into a public humiliation at the most luxurious mall in New York. She was wearing a simple caramel-colored blouse and jeans, nothing attention-grabbing, but apparently it was enough to trigger prejudice. Richard Mitchell, the manager of the most expensive boutique in the mall, saw her walk in and immediately approached with a look of disapproval. He had built his career at that store on the idea that only the right kind of customers should be welcome. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said with a fake smile, "but I think you've come to the wrong store. We carry very specific products here." Eleanor stopped looking at the children's dresses and stared at him in surprise. At 52, she had faced plenty of prejudice in her life, but never so directly. "I'm looking for something special for my granddaughter," she replied calmly. "She's in the hospital, and I wanted something pretty to brighten her day." "I understand." Richard kept his condescending tone. "But our prices might be a bit beyond what you're used to. Maybe the lower floor has options more suited to your budget." His words echoed through the store, drawing curious glances from other customers. Eleanor felt heat rise to her face, but tried to keep her composure. "Can I at least see the prices?" she insisted. Amber, a young saleswoman in her early 20s, discreetly stepped forward. It was her third day on the job, and she still wasn't used to Richard's methods. "Of course you can, ma'am," Amber said kindly. "We have some beautiful pieces that just arrived yesterday. Your granddaughter will love them." Richard's face twisted in irritation. He turned to Amber, speaking just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Amber, I need to speak with you in the back now." Eleanor stood frozen in the middle of the store, feeling every eye on her. A blonde customer dressed in expensive clothes whispered something to her friend, and both giggled softly. A man in a suit watched her curiously while his wife pulled him away. When Richard returned a few minutes later, Amber was visibly shaken. He addressed Eleanor again, this time not bothering to hide his impatience. "Ma'am, I'll be very clear. Our clientele has a very specific profile. It's nothing personal, just store policy. I'm sure you'll find what you're looking for in other, more appropriate places." "Store policy," Eleanor repeated, incredulous. "What kind of policy is that?" "One that's worked very well for 5 years," he replied curtly. "This store has the best sales in the mall precisely because we know who our real customers are. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out." Now continuing. Just then, an elegant woman with silver hair who had been watching the scene for a while stepped forward. "Excuse the interruption, but I've been waiting for service for half an hour," she said to Richard. "I see you have time to kick customers out, but not to help those who want to buy." Richard was flustered. The woman clearly had high purchasing power, exactly the type of customer he prioritized. "Of course, ma'am," he stammered. "Amber will assist you right away." "Actually," the woman continued, "I'm curious to know what kind of policy allows such blatant discrimination. I'm a retired lawyer, and I find this very interesting." The atmosphere in the store grew tense. Richard realized others were listening. He needed to regain control fast. "There's no discrimination here," he lied. "I was merely suggesting other options for you." "Based on what?" Eleanor finally found her voice. "On the fact that I'm not wearing designer clothes." "That's not it." "Then what is it?" the retired lawyer interjected. "Because outside the store, I didn't see any sign requiring a dress code." Richard felt sweat beginning to form on his forehead. He looked around and noticed several people had stopped to watch. Some even had their phones in hand. "You don't understand," he tried to explain. "I've been in sales for 15 years. I can tell when someone is actually going to buy or just looking." "And you decided I was just looking?" Eleanor asked. "Professional experience," he replied with regained arrogance. "I've never been wrong." Amber, who had stayed quiet, decided to speak up. "Mr. Richard, she hasn't even had a chance to properly look at the products. How can you know whether she'll buy or not?" The look Richard gave Amber was icy. "You've been working here for 2 days, Amber. I've spent 5 years building this store's reputation. You'd better learn how things work here if you want to keep your job." "Threats now?" The retired lawyer shook her head. This is getting more interesting by the minute. Eleanor watched everything with a mix of sadness and indignation. She had spent the entire morning at the hospital with her 8-year-old granddaughter Olivia, who had specifically asked for a princess dress to feel better. The little girl had been in treatment for 3 months, and her eyes sparkled every time she talked about the dress her grandmother had promised to buy. "You know what," Eleanor said, "I'll let this go. My granddaughter is waiting for me at the hospital, and I don't want to waste any more time here." She headed for the exit but turned around before leaving. "I just hope one day you realize people shouldn't be judged by appearances. You never really know who's standing in front of you." Richard let out a sarcastic laugh. "Thanks for the advice. I'm sure it'll be very useful." When Eleanor left, the atmosphere in the store remained tense. The retired lawyer shook her head disapprovingly and also walked out without buying anything. Amber looked visibly upset, and other customers whispered among themselves. "Back to work," Richard ordered. "And Amber, we'll talk about professional attitude later." The next day, Eleanor decided to return. She had spent the night thinking about the situation, especially Olivia's persistent request. The little girl had asked 3 times about the dress during her afternoon visit at the hospital. This time, Eleanor wore a more formal outfit she had kept from her office days. She thought maybe this way she could avoid embarrassment and simply buy the gift for her granddaughter. But when she entered the store, Richard recognized her immediately. "You came back," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Changed your mind about the other options I suggested?" "I just want to buy a gift for my granddaughter," Eleanor replied firmly. "Of course," he pretended to consider. "But I believe I made our policy clear yesterday." Amber stepped forward again, but Richard cut her off with a look. "Actually," he continued, "I'm starting to question your real motives. Twice here, buying nothing." "I didn't buy because I wasn't allowed to," Eleanor protested. "Or because you never intended to," he shot back. "James." A burly man in a security uniform approached. Eleanor recognized an uncomfortable look in his eyes, as if he didn't want to be there. "James, escort her out, please. And note that she's banned from returning." "Mr. Richard," James hesitated. "She hasn't done anything that—" "Are you questioning my orders?" Richard raised his voice. Eleanor felt a wave of humiliation even stronger than the day before. This time, there were even more people in the store, including families with children watching the scene with curiosity. "That won't be necessary," she said with dignity. "I'll leave on my own." As she walked out, Eleanor heard whispers behind her. A mother quietly explained to her young daughter about people who cause trouble in stores. A man remarked to his wife that some people don't know their place. But there were also different voices. A young woman with colorful hair muttered, "How absurd," to her boyfriend. An elderly man with a cane shook his head in disapproval. Amber looked on the verge of tears. Outside the store, Eleanor paused for a moment to regain her composure. She noticed that James had followed her and was waiting a few steps behind, clearly embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said softly. "I don't agree with this, but I need the job." "I understand," Eleanor replied gently. "We all have our obligations." "It's just—" James hesitated. "You remind me of someone, but I can't remember who." Eleanor smiled sadly and walked away. She strolled through the mall, observing the other stores. It was an impressive complex, with over 200 shops spread across 3 floors. Luxurious displays, impeccable decor, everything designed to impress. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now continuing, she stopped at a food court on the 2nd floor and ordered coffee. As she sipped, she watched the flow of people, families, couples, groups of friends, all seemingly enjoying the experience of shopping at one of the city's most elegant malls. Her phone rang. It was Olivia, calling from the hospital. "Grandma, did you get the dress?" The girl's voice sounded anxious. "Still working on it, sweetheart," Eleanor replied, trying to hide her sadness. "The nurse said if I behave well, I can leave my room tomorrow to walk around the hospital a little. I wanted to wear the new dress." "I'll make it happen, Olivia. I promise." After hanging up, Eleanor stared at the movement in Richard's store below. She could see people coming and going, some carrying shopping bags, At that moment, she made a decision. Eleanor pulled another phone from her purse, a more sophisticated model she rarely used, and dialed a number. "Michael, it's me, Eleanor. I need you to come to Prestige Galleria now. Yes, it's urgent. No, I can't explain over the phone. Meeting room, 1 hour." Over the next hour, Eleanor walked through the mall. She discreetly greeted some cleaning staff, waved to the manager of a bookstore, and exchanged a few words with the young man setting up the Christmas decorations. Each interaction was brief, but Eleanor seemed to know these people far better than an ordinary customer would. When she passed Richard's store again, he saw her and made a point of calling James over. "That woman has been circling the mall for an hour," he said loudly enough for Eleanor to hear. "That's not normal customer behavior. She's obviously scoping things out for something." "For what, sir?" James asked, confused. "Use your imagination," Richard replied arrogantly. "People like her don't come to places like this by accident." This time, Amber couldn't hold back. "Mr. Richard, you can't just accuse the lady of..." "Of what?" he interrupted sharply. "Do you really want to keep defending this woman? Because I can settle this right now." "Are you saying you'd fire me for defending a customer?" Amber asked, incredulous. "I'm talking about upholding this store's standards," he replied curtly. "If you can't understand this, maybe this isn't the right place for you." "Then it really isn't," Amber replied, removing her badge. "I won't stay in a place where people are treated this way." She tossed the badge onto the counter and walked out of the store. Richard turned red with anger, but tried to keep his composure in front of the watching customers. Minutes later, Michael Reynolds, a distinguished man in his early 50s, arrived hurriedly at the mall. He looked nervous, checking his watch constantly as he headed for the elevators leading to the administrative area. Richard, watching everything from the second floor where his store was located, saw when Eleanor met Michael near the elevators. They spoke briefly before going up together. "Interesting," Richard murmured to himself. "The woman knows someone from management." He decided to call his contact in the mall administration. "Jennifer, it's me, Richard. Everything's fine. Listen, there's a woman here causing trouble, and now she went up to talk to someone from management." "What do you mean I can't know?" "But she's interfering with my store's business." Jennifer's response was curt and final. Richard hung up with a puzzled expression. For the first time, he felt a twinge of worry. In the third-floor meeting room, Eleanor spoke with Michael, the mall's general manager. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry about this," Michael said, visibly nervous. "Had I known you were being treated this way..." "It's not your fault, Michael," Eleanor reassured him. "In fact, it's given me a very interesting perspective on how things work here." "What do you want me to do? I can fire the manager today." "Not yet," Eleanor replied thoughtfully. "First, I want to understand the extent of the problem. How many complaints have you received about that store in the last few months?" Michael checked some papers he had hastily brought. "Well, a few, but Richard always assured me they were misunderstandings. And the store's sales results are excellent." "The sales are good because he handpicks his customers," Eleanor observed. "But how many potential customers are we losing, and what kind of reputation are we building?" "Do you want me to call him here?" "Not yet. First, I want you to schedule a meeting with all the managers in 2 hours. Say it's about new customer service policies." "Eleanor, may I ask, why didn't you introduce yourself yesterday, or this morning?" Eleanor looked out the meeting room window. From up there, she could see the entire mall. People coming and going, families strolling, young people enjoying themselves. "Because I needed to see with my own eyes how things really work here. If I had introduced myself as the owner, everyone would have behaved differently. I'd never know the truth." She paused. "Now I know the problem is bigger than I thought." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 2 hours later, the meeting room was full. All the managers of the mall's main stores were present, along with some supervisors and coordinators. The atmosphere was tense. Meetings called so urgently rarely brought good news. Richard arrived confidently. He had spent the last few hours convincing himself the meeting was likely about his store's excellent results. Maybe he'd even receive some recognition. "Good afternoon, everyone," Michael began, visibly nervous. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Today we'll discuss our customer service policies, but before that, I'd like to introduce someone. He glanced at the door. You may come in now. Eleanor entered the room accompanied by two men in suits whom no one recognized. Richard spotted her immediately and felt a chill in his stomach, though he still didn't fully grasp the situation. Everyone, Michael continued, his voice slightly shaky, I'd like to introduce you to Eleanor Thompson, owner of Prestige Galleria. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard felt as if the floor had vanished beneath his feet. Around the table, expressions of shock and confusion multiplied. Well, good afternoon, everyone, Eleanor said calmly, taking the seat at the head of the table that Richard had automatically assumed. Richard staggered to his feet, yielding the spot, unable to utter a word. Over the past 2 days, Eleanor continued, I've had a very enlightening experience as a customer at this mall. I decided to call this meeting to share those experiences with you. She looked directly at Richard. Mr. Mitchell, isn't it? Yes, ma'am, he stammered. How you told me yesterday that you had 5 years of experience and that you were never wrong about customers. Would you like to reconsider that statement? Ma'am, if I had known who you were— Exactly, Eleanor interrupted. If you'd known who I was, you would have treated me differently. But what if I were just a grandmother wanting to buy a gift for her sick granddaughter? Would I deserve less respect? No, ma'am, of course not. But that's exactly how you treated me, in front of other customers, employees, and visitors. One of the suited men who had entered with Eleanor stood up. My name is Jonathan Miller, Ms. Thompson's attorney. We recorded the interactions of the past 2 days for documentation purposes. He connected a laptop to the room's projector. I'd like everyone to see some examples of what we're discussing. The images on the screen clearly showed Richard ejecting Eleanor from the store, his expressions of disdain, the prejudiced remarks. They also showed Amber being scolded for trying to help, and later being practically forced to resign. My God, murmured Patricia, manager of a shoe store. Richard, how could you— I didn't know, he repeated like a mantra. Didn't know what? Eleanor asked. That I was the owner or that I was a human being who deserved basic respect? Richard couldn't answer. Mr. Mitchell, Eleanor continued, you mentioned that your store has the best results precisely because you know who the real customers are. Could you elaborate on that philosophy? Well, it's just people with higher purchasing power. People like me, dressed simply, don't fit that category. Ma'am, I made a terrible mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Mr. Mitchell. It was a choice you made based on prejudice and arrogance. Over the next 15 minutes, more videos played. Similar situations with different customers. A housewife humiliated for wearing grocery store clothes. A well-dressed young black man being followed around the store as if he were a theft suspect. An elderly woman being ignored because she obviously couldn't afford anything here. This is awful, commented Marcus, manager of an electronics store. Richard, I had no idea. None of us did, said Karen, manager of a jewelry store. How has this not made it to the news or social media? It hasn't yet, said Jonathan, but it could have, and it would have been a disaster for the mall's reputation. Eleanor stood and walked to the window. I bought this mall 2 years ago with a very specific dream. I wanted to create a space where everyone felt welcome, a place where families could stroll without fear of judgment, where young, old, rich, poor, everyone could feel comfortable. She turned to face the room. But I've discovered that at least one of our stores operates on exclusion and prejudice, and I wonder how many others do the same in more subtle ways. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Mrs. Thompson, Richard finally found the courage to speak, I take full responsibility. I know I acted terribly, but please consider that I have a family to support. Everyone here has responsibilities, Mr. Mitchell. The difference is that not everyone uses that as an excuse to mistreat others. What? What will happen to me? Eleanor studied him for a long moment before answering. You'll get an opportunity you denied many people, the chance to start over and learn. How so? You'll be demoted to junior sales associate under direct supervision. You'll learn customer service from scratch, working directly with people from all walks of life. But my salary, it will reflect your new position. If you show genuine change over the next 6 months, we can discuss career progression. And if I refuse, then you're free to seek other opportunities. But know that any reference I provide will be completely honest about the reason for your departure. Richard lowered his head, realizing he had no real choice. Now, Eleanor continued, addressing the room, we're implementing immediate changes across the entire mall. Over the next hour, she outlined a comprehensive transformation plan. Mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all employees, clear anti-discrimination policies, performance evaluations based not just on sales but service quality, and regular mystery shoppers to monitor behavior. And the new boutique manager will be Amber Davis, who lost her job yesterday for doing the right thing, Eleanor announced. But she's too young and inexperienced, Richard protested. She's young, but she has something you'll need to learn. Humanity, Eleanor replied sharply. After the meeting, Eleanor stayed behind with Michael and Jonathan. How do you think this will play out? Michael asked. Honestly, some will embrace the changes, others will resist. But I'd rather have a smaller mall with strong values than a large complex built on discrimination. And Richard, do you think he can really change? Eleanor gazed out the window at the bustle below. I don't know, but I'll give him the same chance he should have given everyone he mistreated. If he wastes it, that's his choice. The next day, Eleanor finally bought Olivia's dress. Amber, now promoted to manager, personally assisted her with heartfelt care. Olivia will look stunning in this dress, Amber said, carefully wrapping it in special gift paper. Thank you for standing up for me, even at the risk of losing your job, Eleanor said sincerely. My mother always taught me that what's right is right, no matter the consequences, Amber replied. When Eleanor arrived at the hospital and gave Olivia the gift, the little girl's eyes sparkled like stars. Grandma, it's the most beautiful thing ever, she exclaimed, hugging the dress to her chest. You know what, sweetheart? Sometimes the most beautiful things in life come after the hardest moments. In the following months, Prestige Galleria's changes were implemented gradually but consistently. Richard, working as a junior sales associate under Amber's supervision, underwent a genuine transformation. At first, he resisted and remained arrogant even in his new role. But Amber, with patience and firmness, taught him day by day about respect, empathy, and true customer service. Mr. Richard, Amber said during his second month as a salesperson, you need to understand that every person who walks in here has a story. Like the woman who came in yesterday looking for a dress for her daughter's wedding. You treated her as if she were a nuisance. But she spent 40 minutes trying things on and didn't buy anything, Richard complained. She didn't buy because she could tell you were impatient and just wanted her to leave. Customer service isn't just about sales, it's about making people feel valued. Gradually, Richard began to understand. He saw customers returning specifically because they had been treated well. He watched entire families falling in love with products, not because of the price, but because of the shopping experience. He witnessed touching moments, like a grandmother buying her grandson's first school outfit, or a father picking out a special gift for his daughter who had earned a scholarship. Amber, he said one day, 3 months after his demotion, I want to apologize, not just for what I did to you, but for all the arrogance and prejudice I showed. What matters is that you're learning, she replied generously. Can I ask you something? Why don't you hate me? I was terrible to you. Amber smiled. Because I believe people can change, and because I'd rather spend my energy building something better than holding on to bitterness. Meanwhile, Eleanor continued making her regular visits to the mall, always dressed discreetly, observing how employees treated different kinds of customers. James, the security guard, had finally remembered where he knew her from, photos in business magazines his wife read. He became a valuable ally, reporting situations that needed attention. Mrs. Thompson, he said during one of their informal chats, the food court staff were talking about how the mall's atmosphere has changed. People seem happier working here. And you, James, how do you feel? Much better, Mom. Before I was constantly called to remove people for reasons that made no sense. Now I only step in when it's truly necessary. My job feels more dignified. 6 months after the initial events, Eleanor held another meeting with all the managers. The results were surprising. The mall's overall sales have increased by 15%, Michael reported. But more importantly, customer satisfaction ratings have gone up by 40%. How is that possible? Marcus asked. We always believed being more selective increased profits. Because we've discovered there are far more people willing to spend money than we ever imagined, Karen explained. I myself lost several big sales in the past by making assumptions about customers. Richard asked to speak. I'd like to share something with you all. Last week I helped a family who came into the store. The father was wearing simple work clothes, the mother a very plain dress. 6 months ago, I would have treated them with disinterest. He paused. They ended up spending $1,200 on clothes for their 3 children, who are starting at a new school, and they told me it was the first time they'd ever felt comfortable in a store at this mall. How many stories like that have we missed over the years? Patricia reflected. Too many, Eleanor admitted. But what matters is what we do from here on out. Amber also shared her experience as a manager. We implemented a system where every employee reports a positive customer service story each month, not sales, but special moments with customers. The results have been incredible for team morale. And it's worked so well that we're implementing it mall-wide, Eleanor announced. After the meeting, Richard approached Eleanor. Mrs. Thompson, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity you gave me. You made the most of it. Amber told me about her growth. I've learned more about customer service in these 6 months than in 15 years of my career. Not just techniques, but about treating people as human beings worthy of respect. And what do you plan to do with this knowledge? If you'll allow me, I'd like to keep working here. Not necessarily returning as a manager, but helping train other employees in compassionate service. Eleanor smiled. That can be arranged. A year later, Prestige Galleria had become a benchmark for customer service in New York. Stories about the transformation reached the media, but they always focused on the positive changes, never exposing the previous issues. Richard, now the customer service training coordinator, led workshops for new and long-time employees. His personal story of transformation was a powerful example of how prejudices can be overcome. The first step to good service, he taught, is understanding that every person who walks in here deserves our respect and attention. It doesn't matter how they're dressed, how old they are, or what first impression they make. Everyone has a story, dreams, and the right to be treated well. Amber had established herself as one of the most respected managers in the mall. Her store not only maintained excellent sales, but was often cited in satisfaction surveys as an example of exceptional service. You changed my life, she told Eleanor during an informal chat. Not just professionally, but as a person. I learned that doing what's right is always worth it, even when it seems hard at the time. Olivia, now recovered from treatment and 9 years old, became a regular visitor to the mall with her grandmother. She always wore one of the dresses Eleanor had bought from the store, now her favorite, and loved chatting with Amber and the other staff. Grandma, she said during one of these visits, why is everyone here so nice? Because they've learned that being kind to people is the most important thing in the world, sweetheart. More important than selling things. Much more important. When we treat people well, everything else happens naturally. The end. So, what did you think of this story? Have you ever been in a similar situation or know someone who has? Share your thoughts in the comments about Richard's transformation and whether you believe people can truly change. We're curious to hear your perspective. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartwarming stories like this one.